At EO 847 on the morning of December 18, 1944, Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool sat in the commander's hatch of his M4A1 Sherman tank, designated In the Mood, watching the fuel gauge needle hover just above the red zone. 2 hours, maybe 2.5 if they kept the engine at idle. His crew of 4 had been running on fumes since dawn, and command had just radioed something that made his blood run cold. 9 German Panther tanks were advancing through the fog-shrouded forest near Lohn, Germany. The Panthers outgunned, outarmored, and outweighed every Sherman in the 3rd Armored Division. Pool's tank had a 75mm gun that could barely scratch a Panther's frontal armor. The Panthers had 75 mm guns that could punch through a Sherman like tissue paper, and Pool had 2 hours of fuel. The mathematics were brutal. Lafayette Pool was 21 years old, a farm kid from Odom, Texas who had never seen a tank before he enlisted. He stood 5'8", weighed 140 pounds soaking wet, and had been commanding In the Mood for exactly 81 days. In those 81 days, Pool and his crew had destroyed 258 German vehicles, 12 Tiger tanks, 21 Panthers, 84 half-tracks. The rest were smaller targets, trucks, armored cars, artillery pieces. Pool had more confirmed kills than any other American tank commander in the European theater, but he'd never faced 9 Panthers with 2 hours of fuel. His crew knew the odds. Driver Wilbert Richards, 23, from Louisiana. Gunner Bert Close, 22, from Pennsylvania. Loader James Murphy, 20, from New York. Assistant driver Clifford Paduano, 19, from California. They'd been together since Normandy. They'd fought at St. Lo, at Mortain, through the Siegfried Line. They trusted each other with a precision that came from survival. When Pool said, "Load AP," the armor-piercing round was chambered before he finished the word. When he said, "Driver, reverse," Richards had the Sherman moving before Pool's finger left the intercom button, but trust wouldn't punch through a Panther's frontal armor. Physics would. The first Panther appeared at Uro-902. Pool saw it through the fog at 800 yards, a low, angular silhouette moving between 2 farmhouses on the eastern edge of Lohn. The Panther hadn't seen them yet. Pool had maybe 15 seconds before the German commander spotted the Sherman's distinctive profile. He made a decision that defied every tactical manual written by the US Army. He ordered Richards to drive straight at the Panther, full throttle, close the distance to 200 yards where the 75mm gun might penetrate the thinner side armor if the angle was perfect. The Sherman's Ford GAA V8 engine roared, 500 horsepower, 30 tons of steel accelerating across frozen ground at 25 miles per hour. The Panthers' commander saw them at 600 yards. The German turret began to traverse, slowly, too slowly. Pool was gambling on German tank design. The Panther's turret rotation was hydraulic, powered by the engine. Manual traverse was painfully slow. If Pool could get inside the Panther's firing arc before that 75mm gun bore on them, he had a chance. At 400 yards, Pool could see the Panther's commander in the cupola. At 300 yards, he could read the tactical number painted on the turret. At 200 yards, he gave the order. Gunner, traverse right 20 degrees. Target, Panther, side armor. Steady. Bert Close's hands moved across the traverse controls. The Sherman's turret rotated with a mechanical precision that came from repetition. The reticle settled on the Panther's side, just below the turret ring where the armor was thinnest. 80 mm instead of 120 mm, still thick enough to stop most rounds. But Pool wasn't firing most rounds. He was firing M93 armor-piercing shells with a tungsten carbide core moving at 2,030 feet per second. At 200 yards, with a perfect 90-degree angle, physics gave him a chance. Fire. The 75mm gun bucked. The Sherman rocked backward on its suspension. The armor-piercing round crossed 200 yards in 0.3 seconds and punched through the Panther's side armor 3 inches below the turret ring. The tungsten core penetrated the crew compartment, traveling at 1,800 feet per second, fragmenting into white-hot shrapnel that killed the gunner and loader instantly and detonated 42 75mm rounds stored in the ready rack. The Panther's turret blew 30 feet into the air on a column of orange flame. The explosion was so violent it shattered windows in the farmhouses 100 yards away. Pool didn't wait to confirm the kill. He was already scanning for the next target. The second Panther appeared at U-918, advancing from the north through a stand of pine trees. This one was buttoned up, hatches closed, commander inside. Harder to see, harder to kill. Pool watched it through his periscope, tracking its movement, calculating angles. The Panther was moving at 12 mph, turret traversing left and right, searching. The German crew had heard the first explosion. They knew Americans were close. They didn't know where. Pool ordered Richards to position in the mood behind a stone barn at the edge of Lohn. The Sherman's hull-down position exposed only the turret, the smallest possible target profile. Pool waited. The fuel gauge needle had dropped another 1/8 of an inch. 1 hour, 45 minutes left, maybe less. The Panther rolled past the barn at 150 yards. Perfect broadside shot. But Pool held his fire. He was counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The Panther's turret was still traversing away from them. If Pool fired now, even a penetrating hit might not kill the crew. The Panther might return fire. At 150 yards, the Panther's 75mm gun would punch through the Sherman's frontal armor like it wasn't there. Pool waited. 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. The Panther's turret had rotated 90 degrees away. The German commander was scanning the wrong direction. Pool gave the order. Fire. The second armor-piercing round hit the Panther's rear engine deck where the armor was only 40mm thick. The tungsten core punched through, shredded the Maybach HL-230 engine, and ignited 190 gallons of gasoline. The Panther didn't explode. It burned. Black smoke poured from the engine compartment. The crew bailed out through the hatches, 5 men running through the snow toward the tree line. Pool didn't order his bow gunner to fire. He just watched them run. They weren't a threat anymore. 2 Panthers down, 7 to go. 1 hour, 30 minutes of fuel. But what happened next would test every assumption Pool had made about German armor tactics. The remaining 7 Panthers didn't advance. They stopped. At 0925, Pool spotted them through his binoculars. 7 low silhouettes positioned in a defensive arc 600 yards east of Lohn, turrets facing west, engines at idle. The Germans had shifted from attack to ambush. They were waiting for Pool to come to them, and they had time on their side. They knew the Americans were low on fuel. Every minute Pool waited was a minute closer to running dry. The Germans could sit in their defensive positions all day if necessary. Pool studied the terrain through his periscope. Open ground, no cover. 600 yards of frozen farmland between his position and the nearest Panther. If he drove straight at them, all 7 would have clear shots. The Sherman's frontal armor was 75 mm at the thickest point. A Panther's 75 mm gun could penetrate that at 200 yards. Pool would be a moving target in an open field facing 7 guns that could kill him from twice the distance he could hurt them. The fuel gauge read 1 hour 15 minutes. Pool made a decision that would later be studied at Fort Knox and Fort Benning, analyzed in armor warfare courses, and cited in tactical manuals. He didn't attack. He withdrew. He ordered Richards to back the Sherman deeper into Lohn, into the narrow streets between stone buildings where the Panther's range advantage meant nothing. Pool was turning an open field battle into an urban knife fight. The Panthers could see farther and shoot farther, but in the tight confines of a German village, Pool could use the buildings as cover, create angles, and force the Panthers to come to him. The Germans took the bait. At 0947, the first Panther rolled into Lohn from the east, moving slowly down the main street, turret traversing left and right. Pool had positioned in the mood at a T-intersection 60 yards down a side street. The Sherman was invisible from the Panther's position. Pool waited. The Panther advanced another 20 yards, another 10. The German commander was cautious, scanning every window, every doorway, every alley, but he wasn't scanning up. Pool had positioned the Sherman on a slight rise where the side streets sloped upward. The elevation gave him a firing angle down onto the Panther's thinner top armor. When the Panther reached the intersection, Pool had a perfect shot at the engine deck. He took it. The armor-piercing round penetrated 40 mm of deck armor, destroyed the engine, and set the fuel tanks ablaze. The Panther rolled another 10 feet and stopped, smoke billowing from the engine compartment. 3 down, 6 to go. 55 minutes of fuel. The 4th and 5th Panthers came together, advancing from the north and south in a coordinated pincer movement. Smart tactics. They were trying to trap Pool between them, force him to expose his flanks. Pool responded by doing something the tactical manual said was insane. He ordered Richards to drive straight down the middle of the main street between both Panthers at full speed. The Sherman accelerated to 25 men at the pod, charging down the cobblestone street while both Panthers frantically tried to traverse their turrets to track the moving target. Pool's gunner, Burr Close, fired on the move. Firing while moving was considered wasteful. Accuracy dropped to nearly zero, but Close wasn't aiming for a killing shot. He was aiming for suppression. The 75mm round missed the Northern Panther by 6 feet but exploded against a stone wall directly beside it, showering the tank with brick fragments and creating a massive cloud of dust. The German commander instinctively ducked, and his gunner lost his sight picture for 3 critical seconds. Pool used those 3 seconds to clear the kill zone and position in the mood, behind a church at the far end of the street. The Sherman slid to a stop in a cloud of snow and exhaust. Pool had created a new firing position with clear lines of sight on both Panthers. When the dust cleared and the German crews reacquired their targets, Pool wasn't where they expected him to be. He was behind them, close-fired twice in 15 seconds, 2 armor-piercing rounds, 2 hits on rear armor, 2 burning Panthers. The crews bailed out and ran. Pool didn't pursue. He was counting fuel, counting ammunition, counting minutes. 5 down, 4 to go, 35 minutes of fuel. The mathematics were getting worse. Pool had started the engagement with 71 rounds of 75mm ammunition. He'd fired 8 rounds and scored 5 kills, a 62% hit rate that was nearly impossible under combat conditions. But he still had 4 Panthers to kill and only 63 rounds left. More critically, he had 35 minutes of fuel. If the remaining Panthers stayed defensive, if they waited him out, Pool would run dry and have to abandon in the mood. The tank would be captured intact. The crew would have to retreat on foot through German-held territory. 35 minutes. At 10:23, Pool spotted movement through his periscope. The remaining 4 Panthers were advancing together in a tight wedge formation, moving west through Lohn's eastern suburbs. They'd abandoned caution. They were going to overwhelm him with firepower and numbers, 4 75mm guns against 1. If even one Panther got a clean shot, the Sherman was finished. Pool had one advantage left. He knew Lohn's street layout. The Germans didn't. Pool had studied the town for 3 days while the division was staged outside the defensive perimeter. He knew every alley, every courtyard, every intersection. He ordered Richards to move to a position the crew would later call the slot, a narrow passage between 2 buildings barely wide enough for the Sherman to fit through. The walls on either side scraped against the tank's fenders. The passage was so tight that if the Sherman got stuck, the crew couldn't bail out through the side hatches. But the passage opened into a small square that gave Pool a firing position with a perfect angle on the main street where the Panthers would pass. Pool positioned the Sherman at the mouth of the passage, turret facing the square, engine running, waiting. The first Panther rolled past at 10:29. Pool let it go. The second Panther followed 10 seconds later. Pool let it go. The third Panther appeared. Pool gave the fire order. Close put an armor-piercing round through the third Panther's side armor at 70 yards. The tank lurched to a stop, smoke pouring from the crew compartment. The fourth Panther, directly behind, couldn't stop in time. It crashed into the burning wreck at 8:30, the impact crumpling both tanks' rear fenders and jamming the fourth Panther's turret traverse. The first 2 Panthers, now ahead of the wreck, realized they'd been ambushed. Both tried to reverse. Both commanders made the same mistake. They backed up in straight lines instead of using the buildings for cover. Pool's crew destroyed both Panthers in 45 seconds. Close fired. Murphy loaded. Close fired again. 2 shots. 2 kills. 7 Panthers destroyed. 1 Panther left. The one with the jammed turret stuck against the burning wreck. Pool could see the German crew through his periscope. 5 men frantically working to unjam the turret traverse, knowing they were exposed, knowing the American Sherman was somewhere close. The Panther's turret was locked facing east. Pool was west. The Germans couldn't rotate the gun to shoot him. They were helpless. Pool gave an order that surprised his crew. He told them to hold fire. He grabbed the radio microphone and broadcast in clear English on the German tactical frequency that American intelligence had identified 3 days earlier. He told the German crew to abandon the Panther and walk north with their hands visible. He gave them 30 seconds. 28 seconds later, 5 German tankers climbed out of the Panther and walked north with their hands raised. Pool watched them through his binoculars until they disappeared into the forest. Then he put an armor-piercing round through the abandoned Panther's engine deck to ensure it could not be recovered. 8 Panthers destroyed, 1 surrendered, 0 American casualties. 22 minutes of fuel remaining. Pool ordered Richards to drive in the mood back to the division fuel depot at Eschweiler, 19 miles west. The Sherman rolled into the depot at 11:47 with the engine sputtering, the fuel gauge buried in the red, the crew exhausted. A maintenance sergeant later measured the remaining fuel, 3.7 gallons. Enough for 12 minutes of operation, maybe 15. Lafayette Pool's engagement at Lohn became the most studied tank battle in U.S. Army history. 9 German Panthers destroyed or captured by a single M4A1 Sherman in 2 hours and 11 minutes. 0 friendly casualties. The kill ratio, 9:6, has never been matched by an American tank crew in any war. Pool's tactics were analyzed, broken down, reconstructed, and taught at Fort Knox to every armor officer class from 1946 to the present day, but Pool didn't live to see it. 31 days after Lohn, on January 18, 1945, Pool was advancing through a German forest near Stupigny, Belgium, when an 88mm artillery shell struck in the mood and killed him instantly. He was 21 years old. His total confirmed kills: 258 German vehicles in 112 days. The highest-scoring American tank commander of World War II. In the mood survived the war. The tank was shipped back to the United States in 1946, restored, and placed on permanent display at Fort Moore, Georgia. The fuel gauge is still stuck just above empty. The maintenance placard inside the driver's compartment still shows Pool's final fuel reading, 3.7 gallons. 12 minutes left. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Lafayette Pool doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.